Hi, everyone. I'm Judy, Elliott, and coming up on today's show, Christopher Brown, attorney with Geiger Law Group, will be providing great legal advice on the issues we may need to know, as well as when is it time to seek a lawyer. All this coming up today. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'm Judy Elliott, and welcome to our show today. I have a special guest with me, Christopher Brown, who's an attorney with Geiger Legal Group. Christopher, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Judy.
I hope to provide a lot of information to our viewers. Some I feel is going to be very beneficial for people, particularly who are, or in accidents or other areas that are in need of maybe talking with an attorney. Let's talk a little bit about you. And I know that you moved to Dalton how many years ago?
Well, we moved back to Dalton about 8 years ago, 2014. Amanda and I were living out in Denver, had our first kid, Arden, and then we wound up moving back in 2014 to be closer to family.
Right. And beautiful family. Your wife is Amanda, and creative arts skilled, everyone knows, and certainly have a beautiful family here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk with you today. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the law firm itself. What kind of practices? What kind of law do you practice?
Yeah. So Geiger Legal Group is a primarily plaintiffs' personal injury law firm. So we handle accident claims, car wreck claims, medical malpractice. It's somewhat new for me. I've been doing it for about 2 years. Before then, I was on the other side and defending doctors, lawyers, and other kind of insurance defense clients doing it. So I have an interesting perspective coming from the defense side and now moving to the plaintiff side and representing people who have been injured. Right.
And I know this wasn't really on our list of questions, but I hope you don't mind me asking you this question, okay? All right, you ready? So as an attorney, how do you, what do you love about it the most?
My wife would say that I love to argue with people. So I guess that's part of it. But no, I like helping people. When I was defending people, I felt, I was defending valid claims that had defenses. Now I'm defending people who are injured and they have real claims and they've run into obstacles with the insurance company paying them what their claims are worth. And so I get to step in and help them and increase the value of those claims and get them compensation for their injuries. So it's a feel-good thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it must also, from that standpoint, like when you see people who are so happy with the end result, let's say, of going through the process. I know the process probably takes a lot of time. I'm not sure on that, but I'm sure it's so gratifying to see happy back on their face.
It is nice to see people smile and say thank you at the end. Yeah. I think one thing that a lawyer does, any lawyer, not just me, but they take the stress out of the situation. So people get injured, it's traumatic. They've got hospital visits, hospital bills. If you're in a car wreck, you've got to get your car working again, get it repaired. And some people say, well, I can handle all that myself. And sure, people can deal with the insurance company. Have you dealt with insurance companies? They're very difficult to deal with and they're stressful. And it's a very stressful time to be injured in that time of your life. So a lawyer steps in and sort of takes away that stress, lets people focus on their treatment, takes care of their car repairs and making sure the insurance company pays for that, getting them back in their vehicle, getting them back to their job, and then kind of going to battle for them and getting them the compensation they need to make them whole again.
Right.
You're never going to take away the injury. You're never going to make people, if they're permanently injured, you're not going to fix that. But what a lawyer can do is get them some money to help make life bearable moving forward.
Right. Now let's talk about your locations here. Geiger Law Group has various locations.
It does, yeah. So our main office is down in Canton, Georgia. And then we have an office up here in Dalton, downtown on Morris Street, which is primarily where I work out of. And then we also have a couple satellite offices, I believe one down in Woodstock and then one in Alpharetta.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. But when we return, I want to talk more in depth about some things that really in prepare for this or that I didn't really know. And so I'm sure our audience will love to have the information about things that you need to know when it comes to how and when to look for that attorney. So we'll be right back with you in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome back again. I am here with Christopher Brown, who's an attorney with Geiger Law Group. And if you've just now joined us, we are going to find out some great information, things that happen day to day that you really may not be aware of, that you should be aware of when it comes to accidents or different things that happen in your life. Hey, let's talk a little bit about, in case someone didn't get the first part of the show, what type of incidents and areas that you represent.
Yep, we handle personal injury claims, so that's everything from car accidents, trucking accidents, medical malpractice, premises liability, which are those slip and falls, dog bites, really anytime somebody is injured due to the fault of somebody else. Those are the type of claims we handle.
Right. What is some of the most common questions that people ask?
Sure. One of the big ones is, what happens if I get hit in a car accident and the other person doesn't have insurance?
That's a biggie.
That's a big one, and it's a big problem. So in Georgia, you're required to carry insurance, right, to drive an automobile. But Georgia's limits are low. You're only required to have insurance of $25,000. And you can imagine, after one hospital visit alone, you start eating into those limits. Some people have bigger policies, but most people stick around that state average, $25,000 to $50,000 in coverage. Now, if you're very severely injured, that's not going to be enough to cover you. Or if somebody is breaking the law and not having insurance and they cause the accident, what do you do? So there's a product out there called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And I would recommend to everybody listening here, to get that coverage, to talk to your insurance broker about that coverage. And it's important to ask for, it's called added on uninsured motorist coverage as opposed to reduced by. And so what that means is that it adds on to whatever liability limits somebody has. So if you get hit by a car and you've got lots of bills, say $100,000 in medical bills, and somebody only has $25,000 in insurance, you want your underinsured motorist coverage to tack on to that 25. So if you've got $100,000, that 25 then becomes $125,000. A lot of people will get sold a reduced by, which means that whatever they get from the liability insurance company reduces their own UM. So you could wind up getting hit with somebody with $25,000 insurance. You get that $25,000. You had $25 in UM, but it gets wiped out because
I was going to say, guess what?
Yep.
Zero.
So you want to ask your insurance broker about that. Make sure that if you do get UM, that you're getting added on insurance, and that way you're protecting yourself and your family in the event that through no fault of your own, you get in a car accident, your family gets injured. You want to make sure that there's some insurance money there to make sure that you can pay your bills, any lost wages, and get you back on your feet.
Is this something you kind of really have to ask about, or is this something that, is just, because I don't really know about this. I'll be honest with you.
So a lot of people go to an agent, usually an auto-specific agent, a Progressive or Allstate or State Farm, and they're going to sign a bunch of documents. One of those documents, if they haven't been told about UM insurance, is a waiver for UM. So they may unknowingly sign something saying, I don't want UM coverage. So I would recommend that everybody who is going to renew their auto policy, they renew each 6 months, so ask your insurance broker, say, what's my UM coverage, my underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, and is it added on or reduced by? And what you want to make sure is that you've got UM coverage and that it's added on coverage. And it may cost a little bit more, but that small bit of premium is going to perhaps make something where you could recover nothing into something where you have, some insurance proceeds to help you out.
Very interesting. Like I said, I hadn't heard of that, so yep. I'm going to talk with my agent. How about that? You mentioned a little earlier about why should someone use an attorney after an accident. And I think you talked briefly about it does take the stress out of it.
There are two reasons. One is to take the stress out. The other reason is attorneys tend to have a value add onto the insurance company. So if you're going to handle a claim yourself, and it doesn't have to be an auto accident, it could be a dog bite, you got bit by the neighbor's dog that was running around, or you slipped and fell at the store because they had left some liquid on the floor. Anytime you go to the insurance company, you're going to say, I have this claim, I got hurt, and I'd like you to pay for my medical bills and maybe a little bit for pain and suffering. And the insurance company is going to say, oh, you're not represented. Okay, well, here's a low ball offer. And because you've probably never made a claim before, you don't know what that offer is.
Yeah.
And so you may jump at it. An attorney is going to be able to tell you, listen, I've handled all these claims before. I can tell you a general value on your claim based on the injuries you have. And when the attorney makes that demand to the insurance company knows that if they don't play ball, the attorney can file a lawsuit against them and go after them. So they tend to drastically increase the amount of the offer to the people who make the claim when they have an attorney on board.
Right. What is the period that you have to do that and talk with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in Georgia, for most personal injury claims, you have 2 years from the date of the accident or injury to file a lawsuit. If you wait too long, if you wait outside that 2-year period, your right to make a claim goes away. And so if you don't file a lawsuit within that period, the insurance company can rightfully say, nope, not going to pay you anything. Wow.
That's interesting to know. 2 years limits.
Yep. Now, there are always exceptions. For example, in medical malpractice, if they have what's called a retained foreign body, say you had surgery and a sponge got left inside you, and you have no idea to know that there's a sponge inside you, but your stomach always hurts and it's been hurting for a while, and 5 years go by, and eventually you get an MRI or some imaging and it shows, oh, there's a sponge inside you. Well, for that specific case, you have a year from the discovery of a retained foreign body to file a lawsuit. So there are exceptions. So even if you think you're outside the statute of limitations period, it's always worth calling a lawyer's office and getting some advice. And that's another thing, is that unlike defense firms or corporate attorneys, plaintiffs' lawyers, they don't charge for an initial consultation. So you can call up the office and get sort of a quick consultation about what your rights are regarding a personal injury claim without having to pay anything for those services.
Really? That's very interesting to know, too. How does, I've got to take a break here.
Sure.
I just looked at our time. So we'll be back to talk more about this, more information coming your way. So you stay with us and we'll be right back. Hi, and thanks for joining us back here. I am continuing our conversation with Christopher Brown, attorney with Geiger Law Group, and certainly a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I know you have a busy schedule, but I wanted to bring you on because a lot of people, they really don't know what to do in terms of an accident, what happens, or what should I do, and and sometimes people may feel intimidated to even contact an attorney. But what is how do you prepare to see an attorney? What's the first step? If I were in an accident some way, not just a car, but another kind of accident, where would my first step be and how would that go?
Sure. I think you're right. I think a lot of people have a stigma about making a claim. They feel that, maybe they're doing something wrong. And what I actually get a lot of that, especially from people in the Dalton, kind of Whitfield County, Murray County area. People who have a lot of personal responsibility, they feel like they shouldn't be making it, they can tough it out. And that's not really what it's about. Every business that you might slip and fall at, or every person who's driving has an insurance policy that's backstopping it. That insurance policy is paid for. The reason people pay for insurance is for exactly that reason when somebody gets injured. So I hope that everyone understands that it's not a money grab to go and ask an insurance company to pay for your medical bills when you got hurt because of the negligence of somebody else.
Right.
So let's take it from the accident itself, right? Say somebody's in an accident, and a lot of what we do is car accident and trucking accident cases. The first thing is shock. People who are injured in a car accident, they're kind of in shock, in a daze. And oftentimes, your body is so full of adrenaline, you don't even recognize that you're injured right away. Sure, the person who's got a broken arm or can't walk, after those are major catastrophic injuries. But people who are still injured, they may be flooded with adrenaline and don't recognize that their back is hurting or their arm is hurting or they've got massive bruising across their chest from the seatbelt. So the first thing is to take stock of yourself. How are you feeling? Because what's going to happen is the police are going to arrive and an ambulance is going to arrive or a fire truck. And they're going to ask you, are you injured? And if you're flooded with adrenaline and you don't even recognize it and you say no, that's going to go down on a report. And an insurance company is going to look at that later and say, well, you told them that you weren't injured. So the first thing is to take assess yourself. Really, think about your body and whether you're injured or not, and respond truthfully. I think a lot of people, even when we go see the doctor, not because of an accident, we minimize, oh, I've had this aching shoulder, but I'm not going to tell the doctor about that because I'm living with it. You don't want to minimize when it comes to being in an accident when somebody else is at fault. So the first thing, take stock of yourself. The second thing, get help if you need it. If you do feel injured, take that ride in the ambulance to the hospital and get checked out. Don't worry about the medical bills and everything. There should be insurance that's going to be there to pay for those. The most important thing is to get your treatment. Once people have kind of gotten treated and get back out, their biggest concern is their car, right? A lot of people use their car to get to work. And so it directly impacts people's ability to earn a living. And their biggest fear is, what am I going to do? If you take it to the repair shop, it's going to take weeks and weeks. And what am I going to do in the meantime? Well, the insurance company takes care of that. If you contact a lawyer, contact the insurance company while your car's in the shop, they should be getting you in a rental that you can then use to get to work. So you're not impacting work. If the accident happened during work, say you drive for Lyft or Uber, or you are a courier for someone, or you're going from one office to the other, but it's during work time, you also want to check in to see if there's maybe workman's comp insurance that comes into play that would pay for lost wages and send you to the doctor to get treated. When people contact us, again, property is the biggest thing. So we do our best to reach out to the insurance company, get them in a rental right away, and then start getting repair estimates for their car. If the car is beyond repair, if airbags have deployed and it's going to cost too much to fix it, they're going to do what's called a total loss, which means the insurance company is going to come out and say, oh, it's going to cost more to fix it than the car is worth, and they're going to cut you a check for the amount, the fair market value of the car. And this is where people get very upset, because a 10-year-old car is not worth generally $20,000 to $30,000 that you would need to replace the car. A 10-year-old car is going to be worth, a good bit less. The biggest problem is for people who don't have gap insurance with a somewhat new car. And gap insurance covers the difference in value between what you owe on the car and what the car is worth. So say you went out last year and bought a nice brand new Chevy Tahoe, and it was $80,000. And you get into an accident right now, and the insurance company says it's a total loss, and it's valued at $60,000, but you still owe $70,000 on the loan. You're going to have to come out of pocket for that car, for somebody else's negligence. So I'd recommend that you check with your auto policy again. Make sure you've got that coverage, but also make sure that you've got gap coverage, that in the event that the car is worth less than what you owe on the car, the gap coverage will come in and pay that difference.
Jeez, that's very good to know, because again, I didn't. I mean, sometimes I think we just go in and we get insurance, and we're like, depending on, and that's good, depending on the people to tell us where to go. But it's also good to be educated enough to know what to ask, And
if you're with a good broker, they should be telling you all these things to think about.
Right.
And it's right. When I was younger, before I did this kind of work, I'd go into the insurance company and say, how much insurance do I need, and what's the cheapest policy I can get, right? But you don't realize what that means in the event that you get into an accident. You only learn after the accident that, I should have gotten gap insurance. I should have gotten insurance. So I'd urge your listeners to go and talk to their brokers about those two things, especially if you've got a new car, pretty new car, talk about gap insurance.
Definitely.
If there's a loan on it. Once the property issues are resolved, people are in a rental or their car's been fixed and they're going to work, then it shifts to the bodily injury claim. And what we do is we wait until the injured person has finished their treatment. Some lawyers will send out a demand letter for compensation pretty soon after they get their client signed. But you don't always know the extent of the injuries at that point. So we like people to go through treatment, and get to the end of their treatment with a prognosis from their doctor to say whether or not they need future treatment, to make sure we've built in and baked in all of those expenses into our demand letter. Once people finish treatment, then we wrap it all together. We put together a letter that says, here's what happened, here's why the at-fault party is at fault, and here's what you need to pay to settle this claim. We send that off to the insurance company. 9 times out of 10, they come back and say, we're not going to pay that. we're going to pay this. And then we say, well, we're not going to accept that. You're going to pay this. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes, I'd say probably 30% of the time, we're able to close that gap, reach a fair settlement that compensates not only for medical expenses and lost wages, but also for pain and suffering, kind of those intangible damages. About 70% of the time, we're too far apart. And we've got to go ahead and file a lawsuit. And what that is basically a lawyer drafts, they call it a complaint, and it's a document with a lot of allegations, and then a prayer for relief, which basically says the same thing the demand letter did on a formal document, and we file that with the court. And that starts a lawsuit. Once that's started, we then move into what's called the discovery phase. And if you watch any court drama TV, you've probably heard of depositions, and that's when you take depositions, and written discovery, interrogatories. That all happens during the discovery phase, and that's basically an exchange of information between the parties so that both sides can prepare their side. After discovery, we move to what's called mediation. Mediation is a voluntary process where both sides hire a retired lawyer or judge, and they give their thoughts on the case and try to get the parties to close the gap on settlement and settle the case. In the very rare occasion where a case is not settled by that point, it gets set for trial. I'd say, in my experience, probably 95% of cases, lawsuits that get filed, make 95% settle before trial.
Right.
So we're talking 5% of the cases might make it to trial. And for those, they go to trial, and that's where you get in front of a jury in the judge's courtroom. Both sides give their side of the case, and the jury gets to decide what to do with the case. Wow.
There's a lot of steps to it, but the whole message that I'm getting out of today's interview with you is really contact an attorney when you have an accident of any sources, that needs attention. I mean, and I agree with you. A lot of times you don't realize you're hurt until a couple of days out.
Right. And I would urge people that if they are in an accident, they haven't sought treatment, but then they start to feel some aches and pains, to go get treatment. Just go get checked out, even if it's an urgent care, just to see, if there is something bigger going on, so you can figure that out.
Right. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being with us today, Christopher.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And I know, and I hope that our viewers have learned a lot through the Geiger Law Group. Thank you again. And we invite you to come back and see us sometime.
Great. Will do.
And you stay with us, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time on the Judy Elliott Show.